This is The Quiet Fight, a podcast for the men who carry weight in silence, the leaders, the protectors, the ones who are told to tough it out. Here we talk honestly about burnout, identity, trauma, and recovery, with no shame, no sugarcoating, just truth. If you're in the fight, you're not alone.
Right. This is a space for men like us, guys who've kept their heads down, pushed through, and carried the weight in silence. My name's Dylan.
And I'm Jason. Between us, we've seen what silence can do on the job, at home, and in our own heads. If you're listening to this, chances are you have too.
I'll be honest with you, we're not therapists, and we're not here to fix anybody. But we are here to talk about what a lot of guys never really say out loud.
Today we're kicking off our first episode with something that I think hits every man eventually, and that is the cost of silence. Let's get into it.
Now, most of us learned at a pretty early age, especially as men, that you don't cry, don't talk when you're not supposed to, don't show weakness.
You got to be the rock, be the provider, be useful, be in control. And to be fair, that's given us a lot of good qualities. Reliability, strong, resilient. But no one really explained to me what that would cost.
Yeah, Garland, that's right. And the thing is those costs are high, and even at a young age, right? Like, I remember, being a kid and, hearing my dad telling me to suck it up, or name calling, such as you can't be wimpy or you can't be a baby, and even at a young age, right, those things really do have an effect on you. I mean, I can remember even at the earliest age, I think I got my ears pierced when I was in grade 5 or grade 6, and I was so excited. And the first thing I did when I got home was to show my dad, right? Because your dad's kind of your rock at that time, and I think the first thing he said to me was, called me a girl, and then told me he was going to rip him out with pliers, right? So things like that are pretty harsh on a kid, or the fact that I'm covered in tattoos, and some people would think that's pretty cool, or whatever, you're super artsy. But the fact of the matter is, my first tattoo I got was when my dad got one, and I told him how cool it looked, and the first thing he said to me was, "Well, Dylan, you're never gonna get a tattoo. You're kind of a bitch," right? So,
what was the tattoo?
I got my last name on my arm, so thank God I didn't get barbed wire or anything like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but words matter, and we were told at a young age to be strong men, and the words that were used against us and the things that were said, I think didn't necessarily make us weak, but it definitely shaped, how we dealt with controversy and stuff like that.
We were told to suck it up,
Yep.
Boy gets hurt, they start crying. What's the first thing that came out of parents' mouths? Suck it up, move on. And I think that definitely there's a time and place for that. Like,
Yep.
I think it builds resiliency in men, which is definitely useful when they get older. But they never really talked about what it would cost. And just like in everything, I think balance is used almost too much in this day and age. You have
Yep.
to find balance.
Yep.
But we weren't really taught what that looked like or how to deal with that. Yeah. So growing up into my late 30s, like now having kids and stuff, it's funny because I find myself, telling my kid when he's, falls down and starts crying, I find myself telling him, suck it up. And it's not till recently where I realized that I'm going to have to teach him how to deal with his emotions, and that it's okay to talk about it,
Yep.
feel it, and it's okay to cry. Obviously, you don't want your kids crying all the time over every little thing. But yeah, I definitely now I need to find a way to teach him how to control those emotions and how to deal with them in a constructive manner. Because crying isn't going to get what he wants in life.
Yep.
When he gets older, he will need to be strong. He will need to be resilient. But he's definitely going to have to learn to process all those feelings, whether it's, talking to dad, talking to mom, talking to friends, talking to sister, talking to anybody, helps.
Yep. No, and I totally agree with you, man. And I think you hit the point with that too, right? Is no matter, what we went through or what other people are going through, the key point is to talk about it, because if you're going to remain silent for too long, that has devastating effects to your mental health. And obviously, if your mental health is deteriorating in any way, that's going to start to seep into other aspects of your life, right? So, I mean, I'm the same way. I don't like talking about my feelings. And it wasn't only until recently that, I started reaching out for help and getting that assistance. When I mentally started feeling better, well, I started pouring myself out to damn near anybody who would listen, right? And that's just from years of not doing it. And, for me specifically, it started off with, not sleeping very well, being irritable, being grumpy, to reaching for another drink and the next one and the next one. And boom, you find out or you learn that you're an alcoholic, right? And so if you're not dealing with that stuff, what you need to learn is that silence isn't strength, and you have to be loud, and you have to be open and be able to be emotional with your friends or your partner or significant other, or if you have children that are of an age to understand, to kind of let them know what you're going through and ask for help when you need it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's look into that a little bit. High functioning but hollow. I think you kind of just led into that a little bit. The high functioning burnout. You still show up to work, you still operate at a high level, still showing up for your wife and your kids, you're playing with them, you run around to different events and keep them busy, keep them occupied. But I can speak for myself. I lost the joy in those little things, like playing with my kid. I was there doing it.
Yep.
I was having, I thought I was having fun, but I wasn't actually in the moment because my mind was so caught up in all the other bullshit, that you deal with at work or, personal lives. You got mortgages, you got bills to pay, you got, you got to be the provider for your family. And I can definitely say for myself, I lost the joy in that. I was just showing up and hanging out, and I wasn't really, in the moments.
Yep.
with my family.
Yep. No, and that makes so much sense. Like, and deep down inside, what I really felt is just tired all the time, and I was irritable, and I would zone out with my partners, and a wall started to develop. I stopped talking to them. Friends that I had for years weren't important to me anymore, and maybe not necessarily important, but I certainly wasn't putting in that time and effort to reach out or hang out. And then it got to the point where I was completely and utterly emotionally numb. Like, I could tell my partner, right, I love you, and I could reciprocate and show love, but it was very superficial. And a good example of how numb I was I couldn't even be happy to celebrate a friend's wedding, right? And it got almost to like a very selfish point where, if I was invited to any special get-together gathering, birthdays, weddings, anything that had some sort of significant relevance in somebody's life, I was 100% happy to go, and I was happy for them. However, my justifications to attend these events were purely selfish because I was numb. And usually, for me specifically, because I used alcohol as a coping mechanism, was I just wanted to get drunk, and I wanted to be the funnest, loving person there, and everyone wanted to be my friend, and everyone was having a good time. But it wasn't for the occasion or to share that memory, because half the time I woke up the next day and I didn't even fucking remember anything, right? And it just became a cycle for me where I was just numb all the time. I couldn't feel anything, and the only thing that made me feel better was getting some sort of rush, or dopamine rush, or getting drunk, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, let's put a label on that. I through my journey, I stumbled across this last couple days, did some reading on it, and it definitely hit home. It definitely kind of explained a lot of the things that that I went through, and I think I think you're going to be surprised how accurate it is. The term is called the region beta paradox, and it describes a situation where something bad enough actually leads to quicker or more complete recovery than something only kind of bad. And this is because the extreme discomfort leads to the motivation to changing it. Moderate discomfort just leads to toleration, and it being left unaddressed. And for me, I mean, that it's so true. I was, everything was fine, work was fine, everything was nothing was so bad that I had to change it, until there was a crisis level event and hit rock bottom, and then you realize that everything that you've kept inside, all the silence that you thought was strength, just came pouring out. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's pretty accurate. I like that you found something that actually had a term to it, and because I've been thinking about that for a long time, right? Like, my life has been an absolute shit show dumpster fire for, I don't know, past 5 or 6 years, where everything progressively got worse, right? And at the time, I was able to separate the things that were going bad in my personal life and kind of have a little box for every little thing, right? So I had my personal life, and there's good and bad things, but I was able to separate that from work, right? But there was good and bad things at work. And then I had my friends and family and all that kind of stuff. And while I was, on a downward spiral, I didn't realize it. But anytime something bad happened, I would just justify, or make an excuse of why this is happening. But when I did hit my rock bottom and my crisis, it was honestly like I woke up from a fucking coma. Yeah. It's like I literally, I have a crisis, and it was like someone slapped me in the face, and the real Dylan woke up. And it's funny because you're referring to that paradox, and the moment that I realized that my life had gotten so bad, and then I finally woke up, all of my emotions came out. And it wasn't like this took some time. It was like I realized how bad it was, and I was fucking crying for like 3 or 4 days, and I couldn't stop. Mm-hmm. Right? And then I just had this strong drive and motivation to be like, I need to change, right? And yeah, it was crazy, man. So yeah, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, sometimes the worst pain is the one you learn to live with,
Oh, absolutely, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when speaking on that, like I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that can relate to that. I know lots of my friends, family, um, coworkers. I think that might hit home. And the bottom line, like, don't wait until it breaks you to fix it. If something feels off, then it is, and you don't need to hit the bottom to start climbing. And the sooner we're able to talk about it, like, obviously I see therapists now and stuff like that. And does it help? I mean, I think there's a place to speak to a psychologist or a professional. For me, it's definitely not the be all fix all. Like, it's not going to fix all your problems, but it's definitely a comfortable place to start talking about some of the problems. I can speak personally. The most therapeutic way or the most healing I've ever experienced is talking to friends, and not just friends, coworkers who can relate. The tough and the toughest thing I think about all that is getting the strength to be vulnerable around people who you look up to and
Yep.
respect. And there's going to be fear of showing them your weakness.
Yep.
But I think if you can get the courage to do that, I think that'll go a long way.
Yep. I totally agree, right? And I'm currently, going to a therapist. I've spoken to a psychologist and all that, and I think that's something I'm going to have to do for the rest of my life. Does it necessarily mean that, do I feel like I'm going to be broken forever? Do I think that I need that forever? Yes and no. Like what you were saying, Jason, is I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to friends, and I have been a lot more open about it, and I'm going to continue to do that. But sometimes, actually sitting in an office with somebody whose job is to sort out, mental illness or mental health or whatever it is.
Struggles.
Yeah, when you're talking about it with your therapist, sometimes you kind of figure it out for yourself.
Yep.
Right? Because I've been in there several times where this is my issue and I'm having trouble with this and that. And then just because I'm talking about it out loud, they don't even really have to say anything. I've kind of figured it out for myself, right? And it just goes to show, how actually being open instead of silent all the time really does, create some positivity. And then you realize that, you weren't actually a broken person. You were just burnt out.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. The signs of burnout. I think that will probably lead into our next episode, so we're not going to go quite into that yet. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people in our profession, or even anybody, corporate jobs, first responders, blue collared workers, they show up, you work 8, 10, 12-hour shifts to make money to provide for your family. There's a lot of pressure there. And then
Yep.
At every job, you're going to have some people who make it harder. And, you get the whiners, the complainers, the people who bitch about everything. All that shit starts to weigh on you.
Yep.
And then on top of the job, or on top of parenting or being a loving husband, making sure you make all the money to pay the bills, provide for your kids, giving your kids the opportunity that maybe you didn't get when you were a child. That's all stuff that weighs on you and can lead to burnout.
Yep. Yeah, and I totally agree, right? And especially the coworker part, personally, I would pinpoint that as a major stressor in people's lives, right? Like if you're working an 8-hour, 12-hour, shift work, whatever that you have, like you're spending most of your time with these people, almost more than your family, right? So the people that you surround yourself with are mainly people that you work with at the end of the day. And so if you're hanging out working with people that are, extremely negative or anything like that, it wears on you, right?
Yeah,
and so when you get home, you're either feeling that burnout, you're feeling negative, or, you might start going to a coping mechanism so you don't feel any of those things, right? And it's just not a healthy and sustainable way to live. And if you choose to do that and not speak out like what we've been talking about, you're going to crash and burn, right? You might have a crisis like we had, so what we need is a place where, we can talk about mental illness, mental health, coping mechanisms, all that kind of stuff without feeling ashamed of it and not being scared, right?
100%. Yeah. Don't wait till the lid pops off. Seek help, seek assistance. Your friends and family are always more than willing to help you out. You just got to find the courage to bring it up. And that's part of why we're doing this, right? You and I is not only giving ourselves a voice, and this can be definitely very therapeutic for us, but also, when we start talking about our stories and opening up, feel free to reach out to us, send an email, look us up on Instagram, listen to our podcasts, send it to someone who they might be able to relate to. Because I know for me, I definitely listen to a lot of podcasts, lots of ones that I could relate to, and it definitely helps knowing that you're not alone.
Yep.
And there are people out there who are struggling, we're struggling, found a way out, and here we are.
Yep. Yeah, like this podcast is supposed to be an outlet, and we want participation. Like, I want to hear people's stories. I want people to ask me, the hard questions. And I'm absolutely willing to be open and honest about everything, and how it's affected me and how I'm dealing, right? Like, we need a place to drop all this weight from our shoulders and out of our heads, right? We're not judging. There's no shame. There's no posturing. We're just men who've been through some serious shit, and very fortunately, we're here standing. We're standing tall and proud, and we're here to talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. We're not here to preach, and we're going to be honest. That's what this whole thing is going to be about, and we're going to keep showing up for us and for whichever guy, gal, needs it. You're not stuck in your own quiet fight. We can be an outlet for you. And I'm no longer going to be quiet about some of this stuff, and that's what this is all about.
Yeah. And this is our first episode. We're going to make a ton more. We're very passionate about mental health, and if this hit home for you in any way, just make sure you share it with somebody who needs it. Again, we love the feedback, and we'll be back next week, and we're gonna have another conversation that most men aren't having but should.
Until then, keep fighting, but don't do it alone.